Hello.
Good afternoon.
Hi, everybody. It is my distinct pleasure to talk to the first partner of California, Jennifer Siebel Newsom. You are a champion for all families in California and also the force behind the California for All Kids initiative, which was created to uh, prevent mental health issues from building by really tackling the basics. Can you tell us about the initiative and also how it all ladders up to emotional well-being?
Great, thank you. So it's great to be here. Thank you to Jim and everyone at Common Sense Media. You've been great partners and a fan of all of your work, and this is a wonderful convening. California for All Kids was a campaign that we launched early on in the administration to address the whole child. And my husband and I are parents of 4, 2 girls and 2 boys, and we all have mental health, right? The pandemic obviously worsened it for all of us. And I learned early on, actually, that really, I think, through the pandemic and our experiences, that if we parents and caregivers don't put our own oxygen mask on first and take care of ourselves, our kids feel and experience, and then all of the anxiety, everything that we all felt during the pandemic. And so for me, it's not just about the kids, it's about the caregivers. So what we did is early on, I launched the California Partners Project with my good friend Olivia Morgan, who has also worked at Common Sense Media. And through our partnership with California Partners Project and the First Partners Office, we started honing in on youth mental health and looking at the statistics that we now all know are that 60% of young girls and 69% of LGBTQ plus youth have experienced serious hopelessness and sadness, that a third of girls have seriously considered committing suicide. We'll talk about, boys, we all know, I think, or increasingly are realizing that boys are moving away from sort of the more progressive, boys that spend time online are moving a little bit, I'm trying not to be political here, but are moving to the right and being sort of influenced by the Andrew Tates and some of that sort of alt-right socialization online that we know is very, very dangerous. My husband and I were alarmed when our kids were watching sports online and my son knew about Andrew Tate and thought he was pretty cool and thought that his Republican grandfather, who's not a Trumper but a fiscal conservative, thought that my father would like Andrew Tate. So that's scary. We're like one of the most progressive households, and our son is confused and asking all these questions. I share that because California Partners Project is coming out with both reports and playbooks to support caregivers and families. Starting, our first one is on SEL and in June, but really this is about meeting families where they're at and ensuring that we have the skills and tools while we're working on legislation to hold tech companies accountable and help them be a force for good in our kids and families' lives. To really provide all the best-in-class resources and support for youth so that they don't go down this rabbit hole of very, very dangerous and limiting narratives around ultimately what it means to be a girl and what it means to be a boy. And if I can, and I want to get into what we're doing in government, but super quick, the messages that I'm seeing, because I'm working on another documentary again, and then I imagine you all are seeing again, are that our boys are learning that they're, while they're trying on all these different forms of masculinities, we're seeing, and neuroscientists are reinforcing this, more aggression, obviously more numbness to violence in the real world, and again, more of this sort of alt-right confusion and curiosity and intrigue. And it's becoming more normalized in boy culture, and that's scary to me. For girls, we're seeing again, the repetition of you're not enough culture, the kind of beauty myth culture, that your value lies in your youth, your beauty and your sexuality, everything that I explored in my documentary Misrepresentation that's been worsened by social media. And that this is very scary, right? Because they're just conforming more and more to these gender extremes, which obviously we know for gender non-conforming youth is also extremely confusing, but it's not good for any of us. Government, California, if I can I just share this? Or
Yes,
do you want to ask
please.
me another question? So what we've done, because we did this early on, we invested $4.7 billion in revamping our entire youth behavioral health system. Super proud of it. This means we're aiming for 40,000 new youth behavioral health workers, a workforce that will also include peer-to-peer counselors, and really diving into and investing in diverse communities and diverse youth that are interested in a career in public health or behavioral health. We're expanding coverage options, expanding access, meeting kids where they're at, providing more services at school. We launched this virtual platform with Bright Life and Saluna for teens. So Bright Life is for families and youth, Saluna for teens, and basically with online mental health support, which is super awesome. And I need to, as a parent of young children who are on their own trajectories and have had their own experiences with anxiety and sadness and hopelessness and overwhelm, on top of being bullied, like many of us have experienced. And I don't use that word lightly. It's the relational aggression that I'm seeing with young girls in middle school. I didn't experience it in middle school. I experienced it later in life, but it's pretty disgusting. So that's all going to come out in our next documentary too, because it's harmful, right? It's like, it's not the sisterhood that so many of us feminists are trying to create for our girls. So I'm really, really proud of California's investment in youth behavioral health. And we've also, three particular things that I'm super proud of. I lead the Governor's Advisory Council on Physical Fitness and Mental Wellbeing with Ronnie Lott. And so we are about to go public with our best practices, and then we're in the next 6 months or so going public with implementation guidelines for schools, and then more on redesigning a positive youth sports culture that's not so elitist and furthering inequities, and also furthering a zero-sum, win-at-all-costs culture that we're seeing in the youth sports culture right now. So I'm really looking forward to that. We also partnered with Child Mind Institute and early on in the pandemic, and provided California's Healthy Minds, Thriving Kids video series and curricula that are available again for free for all California youth and families, with best practices in both, everything from relaxation techniques and breath work to how to handle big feelings, coping skills. So this is a really great bilingual series that I recommend you all take advantage of if you haven't. And there's more, but I'm trying to, lastly, California for All Kids. Farm to School and Universal Meals. We were the first state in the nation to provide universal free breakfast and lunch to California public school youth. Super proud of it. And we've committed and are reaching a third of California public school youth through our Farm to School program, which is basically a beautiful marriage ensuring that California children are eating fresh, delicious, nutritious, and locally sourced food. We've invested in scratch kitchens, we've invested in culinary training, and we have really invested in connecting the dots between schools and food hubs, or schools and local farmers. And for those of you, which I think should be everyone these days, but those of you who are all about addressing climate change, 100% of our farmers that are recipients of our grants are practicing climate-smart regenerative agriculture. What's exciting about the food piece, right, is we know that all children across our country have been eating food that in schools that it's only not delicious, but it's laden with sodium and sugar. It's not fresh. It's not healthy. We know there are all these side effects from obesity to diabetes to cognition to lower cognition to anxiety, depression, you name it. So again, the Farm to School initiative is really helping our kids' mental health, their social emotional well-being, their cognition, their behavior. And so I'm very, very proud of the Farm to School initiative. And and libraries, two other quick things that we've invested in outside of community schools. And we've put a lot of money into transforming the community school system in California so that a third of California's public schools have the funding to transform to the community school model, which is before and after school, summer school, and extensive learning opportunities for California children. As a working mom, I'm pro this because work schedules do not mirror school schedules. And I think what we've done is made our lives so much harder by not recognizing that all of us have lives outside of work and people to care for, whether children or elderly family members. And so, again, the whole mental health piece we're trying to address by supporting families and supporting children. And the parks piece is that we've invested so much in our state parks and ensuring that Californians recognize that those are their state parks. And in doing so, we have our library passes where you can go to your local library and get a parks pass and then go to, the local state parks for free. Also, if you're a fourth grader, we mirrored or mimicked the national fourth grade pass where your fourth graders and their families get to go to state parks for free. I'm all about time and nature. We moved outside of Sacramento into this more rural area with chickens and ducks and goats and sheep and near the river just because I felt like, if anything, we live in California, this gorgeous state, and I wanted to make sure my kids were spending as much time outdoors in nature because nature healed me as a kid when I lost my older sister, and I knew that it would be healing for our own children. And then state parks, libraries is just, and I'll end here, sorry. Library investments, for me, they're also an antidote to time online. So, I have a girlfriend who is an incredible mom, also of 4, and her children read all of the time. And I'm quite envious with 2 of my kids with learning differences who you have to force them to read. But there's so much that our libraries offer, and obviously our libraries are a community hub, and quite a few libraries have these like teen centers and rooms, and it just really excites me because there's nothing like a great story. There's nothing like a great book where you can escape into another world and create empathy and just kind of expand your vision of what is possible for yourself. And I personally would love to see California youth spending more time reading books than online. And so I've been a big champion. We have a summer book club, but mostly just I'm really proud of our all of the investments in libraries because they're just a treasure that I think are really good for all of our mental health. We know that the more time you spend online, your nervous system is sort of upticking, and a lot of doctors and scientists have shared with me that we're all living in our limbic system in fight or flight right now because we're like this, da, 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 da. And those of us who are juggling, work with caring for young children or elders, we're even doing more, and it's not healthy for us. I think those who created some of this technology perhaps know that and have set boundaries for themselves, but I think the rest of us kind of need to learn that and also obviously help our children because we know that we have our children's mental health is sadly being I think ruined by addictive and violent and hate-filled technologies and social media, and so we owe it to them and ourselves to kind of heal this gift of modern technology, but curb it to be a force for good.
So this is a huge initiative on your part, and it involves everything from, like you said, nutrition, nature, books. What do you see as the long-term outcome of this program?
So California for all, I mean, look, the Gov and I, we have 3 more years. We're trying to institutionalize our values so that they carry on beyond our term. And it's really important to us. California government is doing so many phenomenal things. You know, California as a state leads the nation in so many ways. We are, you know, the size of 21 states combined, the largest population, the most diverse population. And often, you know, we've had quite a few conversations with the White House where they're mimicking or copying what we're doing. And you just had our Attorney General on stage who led with, you know, legislation recently and now is supporting new legislation. So that's California. That's the California way, and I'm super proud of that. And that's really the goal. So we have the National Governors Association in less than a month in Washington, D.C., and I'll meet there. And 2 of the big initiatives that we've worked on for the past couple of years. It's always trickier when we're living in these very partisan times, but we'll continue to invite. I'll, you know, meet with first ladies, and then I, you know, have been working with folks both on the Surgeon General side, but also on the Secretary of ILSEC side. To move farm to school and universal meals across the country, just as we're working on sharing all of all that we've done in the mental health arena and the youth mental health arena with other governors. Again, so many of these resources are free, and it's been nice to hear some states follow suit, but you know, as a country, we have a long ways to go.
So you just mentioned that you and the governor have 3 more years to go, and we all know how quickly that time flies. And we've spent a lot of time talking about social media and how big tech giants aren't doing enough. Many of them are based in your state, aren't doing enough to protect kids. What do you think needs to happen to create that change? And what are you and the governor doing to stand up for families?
Yeah, so we're supporting, obviously, well, I'm not supposed to get involved in legislation, but the AG and Skinner and Buffy and I all have conversations, and they know that we support them. We also are all working, as I said, California Partners Project is working, you know, is creating these reports and playbooks that are launching this summer, starting in June. We're holding mental health roundtables with the Surgeon General of the United States. Yesterday, our Secretary, Dr. Gali, Secretary of Health and Human Services, came in my stead to meet with former Senator and Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton. So we're all doing our part and trying to hold convenings, which Jim left, but Jim and I will continue to work on, even if it's behind the scenes, to move things forward. But it's important. Look, there's so many great people in technology that don't realize maybe they have the power to move the needle, and I think that we're going to be doing more convenings. I've started to do more with women in Silicon Valley around women on boards and representation and wealth in California and addressing the wealth gap for women. And those women who are in these positions of clout and the men that are allies, you know, we're just going to have to keep coming together and figuring out creative ways to help tech titans and those in power and technology understand that they can be a force for good and that this is their legacy. And do they really want their legacy to be that they've ruined, an entire generations and destroyed young girls' mental health, worsened relational aggression in our society? I don't think so. So I think we have to paint the picture. I'll do that in my next documentary. We'll keep doing that. We'll support those who are telling these stories. And obviously, thank you to Common Sense Media for continuing to, be steadfast and focused on helping tech be a force for good.
Well, really quickly, we just have 45 seconds. So California is incredibly diverse, ethnically and racially, with half of California's kids being of Latinx heritage. And I just discovered you spoke Spanish because we hablamos español, ¿cierto?
Si ustedes quieren escuchar en español, podríamos hablar en español.
How are you making sure that all families have equitable access to all these services, these amazing services you talked about?
So much of our work is bilingual right now, and that's really incredible, and it's incredibly important. Also, a lot of one example, Farm to School, for example. So many of our grants and our investments in helping school districts, like the top 5 districts are all recipients, the top 5 size-wise school districts are all recipients of our Farm to School grants. Given their population, we're all about supporting culturally relevant food, culturally relevant, curricula, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of how we do this. We recognize that our diversity is our strength, and that is what makes California so special and so rich and so great. And look, we all know that if we can all learn to work together and appreciate everyone's differences, but find common ground and learn from each other, we will create healthier society and a healthier future for everyone.
Yes, I think that's the California dream. So
That's
thank
the
you so
California
much.
dream. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Thanks.
For our final session, please welcome Angela Glover Blackwell, Jim Steyer, and Nick Kristoff.